So why do most learners struggle to understand native speakers? They haven't memorized enough vocabulary. They're not used to connected Spanish. They need more grammar drills. They just need to repeat Duolingo lessons. And obviously, the answer here is B. So a few comments. The hardest part for me is all the different rules about endings of words and when to use them in certain situations and stuff. I can understand that. Even though I'm against memorization, I think we should learn Spanish through understanding like patterns. Rules, when they're said out loud, just said plainly, are actually very high leverage, because if you can find a rule that applies to hundreds of examples, well, then of course you learned one thing and got hundreds of outputs, right? One input for exponentially more output, and that's the definition of leverage. And so I can understand that, like, all the different rules about endings of words, like, we have verbs that end in ar will conjugate this way, verbs that end in erid will conjugate this way, and then different endings. I can understand how like it can be annoying to understand, to learn the tenses and stuff. But in my opinion, that's kind of like, when you get past that hurdle, everything else becomes easier because you're equipped with all these rules and patterns and logic that you can use to create any sentence that you want. And so with that plus vocabulary is what creates Spanish, in my opinion. So this could be true. It's just my opinion on this. This person says that written Spanish is easier to decipher than... Wait, what? Written Spanish is easier to decipher to pronounce than English and French. And that could be true. Written Spanish, the thing with Spanish is that it's spoken very, very similarly to how it's said. Wait, what? It's really similarly to how it's written. And so you will actually... There are very few like silent letters or silences that don't happen over and over again. Obviously, like the silent H's, right? But like, the H is always silent in Spanish. You don't have the thing like in English where you have words like pterodactyl where there's a P that you just completely ignore. Just randomly, that is. That's why you need to listen to podcasts and lots of content to the language you're targeting. Yes, this is completely true. I fully agree with this. Like, the reason why most learners struggle to understand native speakers is because just that answer. They're not used to real fast connected Spanish, because Spanish isn't just like Spanish. It's not just word for word. It's how it is together in context and with speed and with accent. And so you have the actual meaning that you have to understand, which is hard enough on its own, right? That's already pretty hard. But then you also have accent, speed, and context that you have to worry about that majorly affect the meaning of the word and how it's understood. And so that's why podcasts and basically native content matters a lot.